If you happen to browse my YouTube channel, it won't take you long to realise that survival games are my passion. One survival game which has been absent from the channel until now is The Forest. Oddly enough, The Forest was actually the first survival game I bought from Steam, way back in early June 2014, only a couple of days after its first release. It was also the first early access title I bought, a concept which was quite unusual at the time, but also exciting, and it began a real love-hate relationship with Steam early access titles, which continues to this day. What I found after a few hours play, however, was disappointing. There was a great concept there, and the graphics looked pretty enough, even if it did seem to be poorly optimised, but I was surprised at how little game was there. There were enemies which attacked, and a few things you could construct from a predefined blueprint, but everywhere you went, and everything you did, it was made obvious that this game was just not ready to be played. Because of this, the game was soon forgotten, and has been sitting dormant in my Steam library these past 2.5 years. So a couple of years passed by and I noticed my son watching an oddly familiar game on YouTube. I saw right away that it was The Forest, that little game I'd been ignoring for all this time, but it was immediately obvious that there was more. A huge castle was constructed from custom walls, and the player was in the process of planning out how the interior should be furnished. "Is that a mod?" I asked him. "No, it's The Forest." It was then I decided that it was about time I gave this game another go. The Forest is an open-world sandbox survival game, featuring both single-player and co-op modes, developed and published by indie studio Endnight Games Limited. The title is still in early access on Steam, on version 0.52b at the time of writing. Checking through the release history, it is evident that there has been at least one update every month since the game's initial release way back in May 2014. In that time, it has progressed from the slow, rather empty world I first experienced, into a vast environment of oceans, lakes, mountains, caves, and the eponymous forest. Inhabiting the world, you'll find a variety of cannibals, mutants, and dangerous predators, as well as various animals which can be hunted for food and other supplies. In order to survive in this hostile world, you will need to acquire food and water, craft primitive weapons, and build shelter and defences. Perhaps the biggest progress has been made to the game's story. A survival game will sometimes go as far as providing a few sentences to explain why you were in the world, and what caused it to be the way it is, but the rest is usually up to the player to fill in. In some ways, a pre-baked story could be seen as a hindrance to the freedom of gameplay usually seen in this genre. Fortunately, The Forest leaves it up to the player to decide if they wish to progress the story, or simply ignore it and instead spend their time testing their virtual survival skills. The story begins with your character travelling in a commercial airliner with your son sitting next to you. Suddenly the plane starts shaking before breaking apart and crashing into the dense forest. You black out only to awake just in time to see a mysterious tribesman, painted in red, carrying your son away. The ultimate goal of the storyline is to find your missing son and escape the forest together. If you do decide to follow the storyline, it is progressed in a somewhat organic manner through the discovery of clues in the environment, such as photographs, drawings, and old clippings from documents. There are no conversations or cutscenes which would take you out of the survival experience until the very end. This leaves you, for the most part, free to play the game without worrying about reaching some point of no return in the story which could interfere with your open-world experience. Survival, whether you are following the story or not, involves maintaining your health while surviving encounters with hostiles. You will need food and water, clothing or a fire to keep you warm, weapons for hunting and combat, shelter and defences to protect from the environment and enemies, and tools for gathering resources. Food can be obtained by hunting animals or occasionally found in the environment. Hydration can be replenished by drinking the soda cans which are likewise found in the environment, or you can boil gathered water in a cooking pot, or collect fresh rainwater in a suitable container. Clothing can be used for warmth and armour or even camouflage. The best weapons and tools can be found as unique items in the world, but you can also make your own from primitive materials. Shelter can be as simple as a few sticks covered in leaves, to the massive customised castles I mentioned previously. Shelter will not only help to protect you, it can also provide a save point and can give you the option to sleep through the dangerous nights, so long as you are tired enough to do so. Defences too range from simple camouflaged holes in the ground to advanced wire-triggered explosive traps. Crafting is generally carried out by combining components in the inventory screen, while building is done by placing a chosen blueprint into the environment, with the required resources being added afterwards to complete the construction. These blueprints provide a quick and easy way to build the essentials. Alternatively, you can build up large custom structures by combining individual elements such as floors and walls. This custom building system allows you to lay out complex projects in the environment without the need to commit resources until the planning is completed, making large constructions relatively pain-free. The real challenge to survival comes from the hostile inhabitants of the forest, ranging from common cannibal tribespeople to giant horrifying mutants capable of killing you in the blink of an eye. They all have the potential to cause serious problems to the player. The enemies may show advanced AI working together in an effort to surround you, leaving you little chance of escape. Others may charge straight at you while their friends watch from a distance, then stop at the last moment just to see how you react. And depending on your reaction, they may all attack you or simply run away to get help. They may even decide you're a god and start bowing down at your feet, but don't count on it. The variety and realism of the enemy's actions helps to give the impression of genuine intelligence, and makes almost every encounter unique and dangerous, particularly when it involves a group. The enemies will even attack each other under some circumstances, and conversely show distress when their friends are killed. Their intelligence also extends to their behaviour outside of battle. They will investigate evidence of changes to the environment, cut down a few trees or leave a campfire in an area, and the inhabitants will become curious. Cut down a lot of trees or leave the corpses of their comrades to be found, and they may aggressively hunt you down or even send one of the big mutants after you. The dangers posed by the environment and its inhabitants makes exploring the island hazardous at the best of times. These dangers are increased by the onset of night, when the darkness makes navigating more difficult for the player, while encouraging the cannibals to be more aggressive. If you do venture out into the dark, your only guidance comes from the meagre moonlight and the faint glow of your cigarette lighter. You can craft a burning torch or even find a flashlight to provide better illumination, though you will need to recharge these with cloth scraps and batteries respectively. Otherwise, it's back to your trusty little cigarette lighter. And if the darkness of night isn't enough, the network of caves beneath the surface takes both the dangers and the atmosphere to another level. It is in these subterranean areas that you will encounter the most disturbing sights and the most dangerous enemies, such as the previously mentioned mutants. If you do feel brave enough to explore these caves, be well prepared for a long, confusing, and indeed horrifying experience. It is also in these caves that the majority of the story elements are uncovered, so if you wish to complete that aspect of the game, you will eventually have no choice but to venture down into the darkness. If you want to survive for long, you will quickly learn that it is best to avoid conflict whenever possible. Whether you use stealth to avoid detection or just run away from battles when the odds are against you, rushing haphazardly into combat is a shortcut to the game over screen. Fortunately, the stealth approach can be quite effective in this game, and certain types of items can even increase your camouflage level to make it harder for enemies to detect your presence. Bearing in mind the location in which the game takes place, it is only natural that the environment should be filled with trees, grass and other plants. These all seem to react to physical forces such as wind or player contact, which will have an impact on the performance of the game, but it seems to have been optimised quite well, with the frame rate remaining surprisingly high on my computer, which I would consider a fairly average gaming system. When there are drops in the frame rate, it is only in areas of extremely heavy foliage, or when there are large numbers of dynamic light sources. The menus offer plenty of options to customise the graphics settings to suit your system, along with other options to tailor your gameplay experience. Graphically, the game has improved dramatically over the time of its development. The environments look fantastic, with beautifully scenic vistas and hauntingly dark dungeons. Character and animal models are well defined and varied, with natural-looking animations. Special mention needs to be made of the game's effects. Water, lighting, and weather effects are all extremely realistic and help make the environments more immersive. The water effects in particular are some of the best I've seen. Sound effects are adequate and the music is subdued, with subtle audio cues to draw the player's attention to important events. Environmental sounds from chirping birds and crashing waves to the creepy echo of dripping water in the caves all add to the player's immersion. The player interface is also minimalist, only the essential information is constantly displayed on screen, all in a neat little consolidated graphic. and even this can be disabled in the options if you want the most realistic experience. Additional information is displayed as required in the form of temporary messages or as visual cues, such as the player character looking at their arms when they are covered in dirt. There are no crosshairs, instead you have to learn how to aim down sight with each ranged weapon. There is no direction or map displayed as part of the HUD, instead you hold a compass in your hand to get your bearings, and a map can be found, but it must be held in your hands to view it. The Forest is developed from an interesting but poorly realised concept into one of the best survival games available today. The plot is well thought out, progressing from a cliché beginning to a surprisingly original and satisfying ending, though the presentation of the storyline can be disjointed and confusing due to the non-linear nature of the survival genre, and the actual ending cinematics seem to be rushed and are not up to the high graphical standards of the rest of the game. The real enjoyment will come from the survival game itself. Although the environment alone does not pose a great challenge, with food and water being easily accessible, the danger posed by the inhabitants makes exploring the forest a risky and at times frightening proposition. Combat is made difficult by the advanced AI of some enemies and the sheer overwhelming strength of others. This danger increases dramatically when you venture into the dark labyrinth of intersecting caves which lie below the surface of the isolated peninsula. Building and crafting are simple thanks to the in-game survival guide, while the custom building system, which allows the player to quickly plan and create pretty much any structure they would like, albeit with a less than intuitive interface and occasionally glitchy results, is one of the best of any sandbox game available. The real strength of this game above all else is the atmosphere created by the environment. The area covered by the game is deceptively large and features many points of interest, though these do become somewhat repetitive after a while, and it is rare to find anything truly unique in the environment. Venturing through the caves is frightening, more because of what you can't see than what you can. Mysterious shuffling or groaning noises, which seem to originate just outside the range of your meagre, flickering light source, give pause to even the bravest adventurer. The atmosphere is always superb, if at times disturbing. It's the little details which help. The tribal totems, for instance, are more than just gory heads on spikes, but well thought out examples of what the isolated and hostile cannibals might do with their modern invaders, with bodies propped up by tennis rackets and digital cameras fixed in their gaping mouths with string, or pens shoved into the sockets where their teeth were removed. The results are both horrifying and unique. The graphics are outstanding, probably the best I have seen for an indie survival game, and the performance is well optimised. Environmental effects are brilliant, adding tremendously to the atmosphere. Audio is mostly environmental sounds with subdued musical cues to indicate an important event. The minimalist artificial display also helps to add to the immersion. The game seems to be extremely stable, and I did not experience a single crash in the 20 or so hours I played to prepare this review, which included completing the storyline. Co-op multiplayer works well with dedicated servers, meaning you can avoid the kill-on-sight issues which are rampant in many other online survival games. There are also various game options which allow you to completely or partially disable the enemies, if you would like to play in a more peaceful environment, as well as other options to tailor the environment to suit your playstyle. The game is far from perfect, with numerous little issues which bugged me, but these didn't affect my overall enjoyment of the title. There are inconsistencies with what can and can't be collected. I would have liked a more robust quick swap system to allow the player to swap between ranged weapons and melee or tools, then back again, rather than having to go into the inventory. The same goes for the health items. A quick key to take some medicine would be good and, in my opinion, not unnatural. I occasionally became stuck in the environment, but I always managed to get out eventually without having to reload. Some caves can literally take hours to explore if you want to search every hidden corner, and I often found myself just wanting to get out of the dingy environment and back to the surface long before that. The story does not progress in a very logical way, and many clues do not make sense until the end, by which time the clues become somewhat unnecessary. A more serious issue I have is with the loading screen. There are a limited number of save slots, and these cannot be renamed. The real problem is that the display date of the save is of its original creation, rather than the last time it was used. This makes choosing the correct save and avoiding overriding the wrong slot more difficult than it needs to be. I highly recommend The Forest, particularly if you're looking for a challenging survival game with a high immersion level. Although there are some supernatural elements presented in the later storyline, most of the game could be seen as plausible. with cannibalistic tribes of humans as the antagonists rather than zombies or aliens, which would take away from the realism. Some of the imagery is deeply disturbing, so bear this in mind if you are easily scared or offended. It's certainly not a game young children should be playing. The story is hit and miss, but this part of the game can be seen as a bonus to the main survival game, and it is presented in an unobtrusive way, so you can ignore it entirely if you wish. The game is still in constant development, but even in its present state, the Forest is well worth purchasing.